our One Body Audio Theater presents Jeeves Knows Best by P.G. Woodhouse.
Now that it's all over, I may as well admit that there was a time when I thought that Jeeves was going to let me down. What's that? Who's Jeeves? Why, Jeeves is my man, you know, my valet. Officially, he pulls in his weekly wages for pressing my clothes and all that sort of thing, but actually, I rely on him at every turn. So naturally, when Rocky Todd told me about his aunt, I didn't hesitate. Jeeves was in on the thing from the start. The affair of Rocky Todd broke loose early one morning in spring. I was in bed, restoring the good old tissues of about 9 hours of the dreamless, when the door flew open and somebody prodded me in the lower ribs. After blinking a bit and generally pulling myself together, I focused in on my pal, Rocky, and my first impression was that it was some horrid dream. Rocky, you see, lived down on Long Island somewhere, miles away from New York, which is where I was stopping at the time. He was a poet. At least he wrote poems when he did anything, but most of his time, as far as I could make out, he spent in a sort of trance. He told me once that he could sit on a fence, watching a worm and wondering what on earth it was up to, for hours at a stretch. And this was the man who was prodding me in the ribs in the grey dawn.
Read this, Bertie. Wake up and read this.
Oh, come on, old man. I can't read anything before I've had my morning tea.
Then call for that man of yours, Jeeves. Jeeves, we need you.
Yes, sir.
Ah! I say, Jeeves, how do you manage to flow into a room so soundlessly?
They gave me the willies.
Beg pardon, sir.
Never mind, Jeeves. Tea?
Very good, sir.
Now, Rocky, what on earth's the matter?
Read it.
I can't. I haven't had my tea yet.
Well, listen then.
Who's it from?
My aunt.
Oh, the rich one?
Yes.
The one who's going to leave you all her money.
Just listen and you'll see.
At this point, I fell asleep again. You must excuse me, but it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and I haven't had my tea yet. I woke to hear Rocky saying,
What on earth am I to do?
Oh, what?
Tea, sir.
Read it again, Rocky, old chap. I want Jeeves to hear it. Mr. Todd's aunt has written him a rather rummy letter, Jeeves, and we want your advice.
Very good, sir.
All right. My dear Rockmedler, I have been thinking things over for a long while, and I have come to the conclusion that I have been very thoughtless to wait so long before doing what I have now made up my mind to do.
What do you make of that, Jeeves?
It seems a little obscure at present, sir, but no doubt it becomes clear as the letter continues to the point of communication.
Oh, it becomes as clear as mud.
Proceed, old scout.
You know how all my life I have longed to visit New York and see for myself the wonderful, splendid life of which I have read so much. I fear that now it will be impossible for me to fulfill my dream. I am old and worn out. I seem to have no strength left in me.
Sad, Jeeves, what?
Extremely, sir.
Sad nothing. It's sheer laziness. I went to see her last Christmas and she was bursting with health. Her doctor told me himself that there was nothing wrong with her, whatever. But she will insist that she's a hopeless invalid, so he has to agree with her. She's got a fixed idea that a trip to New York would kill her. So, though it's been her ambition all her life to come here, she stays where she is.
Carry on, Rocky, dear boy.
Okay. So I have decided that if I cannot enjoy all the marvels of the city myself, I can at least enjoy them through you. I suddenly thought of this yesterday after reading a beautiful poem in the Sunday paper about a young man who had longed all his life for a certain thing and won it in the end only when he was too old to enjoy it. It was very sad, and it touched me.
That is rather touching.
Indeed, sir.
Touching my foot! I wrote that poem. It's absolute rot.
Well, I say.
She goes on. As you know, you will have my money when I am gone. But until now, I have never been able to see my way to giving you an allowance. I have now decided to do so, on one condition. I have written to a firm of lawyers in New York, giving them instructions to pay you quite a substantial sum each month. My one condition is that you live in New York and enjoy yourself, as I have always wished to do. I want you to be my representative, to spend this money for me as I should do myself. I want you to plunge into the prismatic life of New York. Above all, I want you, indeed I insist on this, to write me letters at least once a week, giving me a full description of all you are doing and all that is going on in the city, so that I may enjoy at second hand what my wretched health prevents me from enjoying for myself. Your affectionate aunt, Isabel Rockmetler.
Well?
What on earth am I going to do?
But aren't you just ecstatic?
Ecstatic?
If I were in your place, I should be frightfully pleased. I consider this pretty soft for you.
Pretty soft? To have to come and live in New York? To have to mix night after night with a mob who think that life is a sort of wild dance? And imagine that they're having a good time because they're making enough noise for 6 and drinking too much for 10? I loathe New York, Bertie. I wouldn't come near the place if I hadn't got to see editors occasionally. And you call this thing pretty soft for me?
My dear old chap, I had no idea you could be so eloquent.
It would kill me to have to live in New York, Bertie. To have to share the air with 6 million people. To have to wear stiff collars and decent clothes all the time. What a ghastly notion!
My dear chap.
I won't do it! I can't do it! I'll be hanged if I'll do it!
Then what are you going to do about it?
That's what I want to know!
You might write and explain to your aunt.
Oh, I might. If I wanted her to get round to her lawyers in 2 rapid leaps and cut me out of her will.
I see your point. What do you suggest, Jeeves?
The crux of the matter would appear to be, sir, that Mr. Todd is obliged, by the conditions under which the money is delivered into his possession, to write Miss Rockmetler long and detailed letters relating to his movements, and the only method by which this can be accomplished, if Mr. Todd adheres to his expressed intention of remaining in the country, is for Mr. Todd to induce some second party to gather the actual experiences which Miss Rockmetler wishes reported to her, and to convey these to him in the shape of a careful report, on which it would be possible for him, with the aid of his imaginations, to base the suggested correspondence.
Could he put it a little clearer, Bertie? I thought at the start it was going to make sense, but it kind of flickered. What's the idea?
My dear old man, it's perfectly simple. I knew we could count on Jeeves. All you've got to do is to get somebody to go around the town for you and take a few notes, and then you work the notes up into letters. And that's it. Isn't it, Jeeves?
Precisely, sir.
But who would do it? It would have to be a pretty smart sort of man. A man who would notice things.
Of course. Let Jeeves do it.
But would he?
You would do it, wouldn't you, Jeeves?
I should be delighted to oblige, sir. As a matter of fact, I've already visited some of New York's places of interest on my evening out, and it would be most enjoyable to make a practice of the pursuit.
You see, Rocky, old chap, leave it to Jeeves. It isn't often that you find an entire group of your fellow humans happy in this world, but our little circle was certainly an example of the fact that it can be done. We were all full of beans. Everything went absolutely right from the start. Jeeves was happy, partly because he loves to exercise his giant brain, and partly because he was having a corking time among the bright lights. I saw him one night at the midnight revels. He was sitting at a table on the edge of the dancing floor, doing himself remarkably well with a fat cigar and a bottle of the best house red, making notes in a small book. As for the rest of us, I was feeling pretty good, because I was fond of old Rocky and glad to be able to do him a good turn. Rocky was perfectly contented, because he was still able to sit on fences in his pajamas and watch worms. And as for the aunt, she seemed tickled to death. She was getting Broadway at pretty long range, but it seemed to be hitting her just right. But then Rocky's letters, based on Jeeves' notes, were enough to buck anybody up. I called Jeeves in and congratulated him. Jeeves, you're a wonder.
Thank you, sir.
How you notice everything at these places beats me. I couldn't tell you a thing about them, except that I've had a good time.
It's just a knack, sir.
Well, Mr. Todd's letters ought to brace Miss Rockmetaler, all right, what?
Undoubtedly, sir.
Door, Jeeves.
Very good, sir.
Where is he? Where is my nephew?
Miss Rockmetaler, sir.
Good afternoon.
How do you do, Mr. Cohen?
No.
Mr. Fred Stone?
Not exactly. As a matter of fact, my name's Wooster. Bertie Wooster?
Isn't Rockmetaler home? Where is he?
Home?
If you remember, sir, Mr. Todd went out in the automobile in the afternoon?
So he did, Jeeves. So he did. Did he say when he would be back?
He gave me to understand, sir, that he would be somewhat late in returning.
You seem to be very much at home here, young man. Are you a great friend of young Rockmetaler's?
Oh, yes, rather.
Well, you need to be, the way you treat his flat as your own.
My own? What? Oh, well, would you care for a cup of tea?
Tea?
Nothing like a cup of tea after a journey. Bucks you up. Puts a bit of zip into you. What I mean is, restores you and so on, don't you know? Don't you think, Jeeves? Jeeves?
My nephew's manservant seems to have returned to the kitchen.
Righty-ho. Well, I'll just run along and tell him we want a cup of tea, shall I? Jeeves, here you are. We want some tea. I mean, in the sitting room, that woman.
Very good, sir.
I say, Jeeves, this is a bit thick, what? She's got the idea that this place belongs to Mr. Todd. What on earth put that into her head?
No doubt because of Mr. Todd's letters, sir. It was my suggestion, sir, if you remember, that they should be addressed from this apartment, in order that Mr. Todd should appear to possess a good central residence in the city.
Oh, yes. I do recall something of the sort. Well, it's bally awkward, you know, Jeeves. She looks on me as an intruder.
Yes, sir.
It's pretty rotten, you know.
Most disturbing, sir.
And here's another thing. What are we going to do about old Rocky? We've got to get him up here as soon as ever we can. When you have brought the tea, you had better go out and send him a telegram telling him to come up by the next train.
I have already done so, sir.
Oh, by Jove, you think of everything, Jeeves.
Thank you, sir. A little buttered toast with the tea?
Yes, do, Jeeves.
Quite so, sir.
Suppose I'd better go back into the sitting room, eh?
It would be advisable, sir.
Well, needs must. Still here, I see.
Where else would I be?
This is a surprise, what?
What is a surprise?
You're coming here, don't you know, and so on.
Why is it surprising that I should visit my only nephew?
Oh, rather, of course, certainly. What I mean is...
Tea, sir?
What?
Do you mean to say, young man, that you expect me to drink this stuff?
Rather. Bucks you up, you know.
What do you mean by the expression bucks you up?
Well, makes you, makes you fizz.
I don't understand a word you say. You're English, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Your cup, sir?
Thank you, Jeeves. So, Miss Rockmetaler, are you comfortable at your hotel?
What hotel?
The hotel you're staying at.
I am not staying in a hotel.
Stopping with friends, what?
I am naturally stopping with my nephew.
What, here?
Certainly. Where else should I go?
But you can't just...
Will you kindly tell my nephew's manservant to prepare my room? I wish to lie down.
Your nephew's manservant?
Yeah, the man you call Jeeves. If Rockmetaler has gone for an automobile ride, there's no need for you to wait for him. He will naturally wish to be alone with me when he returns.
Well, righty-ho then. Jeeves!
Yes, sir?
Ah, Jeeves, just walk me to the door, there's a good chap. Jeeves!
Sir?
This is getting thicker every minute, Jeeves.
Yes, sir?
She thinks you're Mr. Todd's man. She thinks the whole place is his and everything in it. I don't see what you're to do except stay on and keep it up. We can't say anything or she'll get on to the whole thing, and I don't want to let Mr. Todd down.
Precisely so, sir.
But I say, it's rather hard to be flung out of the flat like this and have to go to a hotel, what?
Is it your intention to go to a hotel, sir? What will you do for clothes?
Good Lord, I hadn't thought of that.
Hmm.
Can you put a few things in a bag when she isn't looking and sneak them down to me at the Ritz?
I will endeavour to do so, sir.
Well, I don't think there's anything more to do, is there? Tell Mr. Todd where I am when he gets here.
Very good, sir.
Goodbye, Jeeves.
Goodbye, sir.
You know, I rather think I agree with those poet and philosopher chaps who insist that a fellow ought to be devilish pleased if he has a bit of trouble. All that stuff about being refined by suffering, you know. Suffering does give a chap a more broader and sympathetic outlook. As I stood in my lonely bedroom at the hotel, trying to tie my white tie myself, it struck me for the first time that there must be whole squads of chappies in the world who had to get along without a manservant to look after them. It was rather a solemn thought, don't you know? I got dressed somehow. Jeeves hadn't forgotten a thing in his packing. Everything was there, down to the final cufflink. I'm not sure this didn't make me feel worse. It kind of deepened the pathos. I had a bit of dinner somewhere and went to a show of some kind, but nothing seemed to make any difference. I don't know when I felt so rotten. When the telephone finally rang, I pounced on it like the proverbial cat on a bally mouse. It was Rocky. The poor old scout was deeply agitated.
Bertie? Is that you, Bertie? Oh gosh, I'm having a wretched time!
Where are you speaking from?
Some horrible place called the Midnight Revels. We've been here an hour and I'm about ready to expire. I've told Aunt Isabel I've gone out to call up a friend to join us. She's glued to a chair with "This is the life" written all over her. She loves it, and I'm nearly crazy.
Tell me all, old chap.
A little more of this, and I shall sneak quietly off to the river and end it all. Do you mean to say you go through this sort of thing every night, Bertie? And enjoy it? It's simply infernal! I was just snatching a wink of sleep behind the program when about 1 million yelling girls was down with toy balloons. There are 2 orchestras here, each trying to see if it can't play louder than the other. I'm a mental and physical wreck! Something's got to be done, Bertie. You've got to think up some way of getting me out of this mess. It was you who got me into it.
Me? What do you mean?
It was you who suggested leaving it to Jeeves. It was those letters I wrote from his notes that made the mischief. I made them too good. My aunt's just been telling me about it. She says she had resigned herself to spending her life where she was. And then my letters began to arrive describing the joys of New York. And they stimulated her to such an extent that she pulled herself together and made the trip. I tell you, I can't stand it, Bertie. It's got to end.
Can't Jeeves think of anything?
No, he just hangs round saying, "Most disturbing, sir." Fat lot of help that is.
Well, old lad, it's far worse for me than it is for you. You've got a comfortable home and you've got Jeeves. You've no notion of what I'm going through in this beastly hotel without Jeeves. I must get back to the flat.
Don't come near the flat.
But it's my own flat.
I can't help that. Aunt Isabel doesn't like you. She asked me what you did for a living, and when I told her you didn't do anything, she said she thought as much, and that you were a typical specimen of the useless and decaying aristocracy.
Rather rough, that, what?
I must be going back, or she'll be coming out here after me. Goodbye.
No, Rocky, wait! Ah, blast! What am I going to do? Come in. Jeeves.
Good evening, sir. I've brought a few more of your personal belongings.
Did you have any trouble sneaking them away?
It was not easy, sir. I had to watch for my chance. Miss Rockmetaler is a remarkable, alert lady, but I took advantage of her going out on the town this evening to bring you a few things.
Oh, bless you. You know, Jeeves, say what you like. This is a bit thick, isn't it?
The situation is certainly one that has never before come under my notice, sir. Now, I have brought the heather mixture suit, as the climatic conditions are most congenial.
It can't go on this sort of thing, Jeeves.
We must hope for the best, sir.
Can't you think of anything to do?
I have been giving the matter considerable thought, sir, but so far without success. I am placing 3 silk ties in the first long drawer, sir.
You don't mean to say you can't think of anything, Jeeves?
For the moment, sir, no. You will find a dozen handkerchiefs and the tan socks in the upper drawer on the left. A curious lady, Miss Rockmetaler, sir.
You understate it, Jeeves.
In many ways, she reminds me of an aunt of mine who resides in the southeast portion of London. Their temperaments are very much alike. My aunt has the same taste for the pleasure of the great city. It is her passion with her to ride in hansom cabs, sir. Whenever the family takes their eyes off her, she escapes from the house and spends the day riding about, seeing the city in hansom cabs.
I love to have these little chats with you about your female relatives, Jeeves. But I don't see what all of this has got to do with my trouble.
I beg your pardon, sir. I'm leaving a small assortment of neckties on the mantelpiece, sir, for you to select according to your preference.
So you have no advice to offer me?
Not at present, sir.
Well, good night then.
Good night, sir.
By the next day, I had a call from old Rocky that I should rally round the flat after all. He was feeling a bit confined by his aged relative, and felt in need of a third to dilute the drink, as it were. I had a glimpse of Jeeves as I came into the flat, sitting in the kitchen, and I wished I could have called to him to rally round me. Something told me I was about to need him. As I ran into the sitting room, Rocky fairly came to embrace me.
You're here! Thank the heavens!
Look here, chap. Where's your aunt?
Oh, in her room. She may be back at any moment, though.
Then quick, pour me a stiff one. Something tells me I'm going to need it.
All right. Say when, Bertie.
Stop!
Ah!
Leave it there, rock meddler.
Yes, Aunt.
The time has come to speak. I cannot stand idly by and see a young man going to perdition.
What?
The fault was mine. I had not then seen the light, but now my eyes are open. I see the hideous mistake I have made. I shudder at the thought of the wrong I did you, rock meddler, by urging you into contact with this wicked city.
But you're the one who wrote...
I know. When I wrote you that letter, rock meddler, instructing you to go to the city and live this life, I had not yet had the privilege of hearing Mr. Mundy speak on the subject of New York.
Who? Jimmy Mundy?
Yes, Mr. Jimmy Mundy. I'm surprised that a man of your stamp has heard of him, Mr. Wooster. At Mr. Mundy's meetings, there is no music. There are no drunken dancing men, no shameless flaunting women. So for you, they would have no attraction. But for others, less dead in sin, he adds his message. He has come to save New York from itself, to force it, in his picturesque phrase, to hit the trail. It was 3 days ago, rock meddler, that I first heard him. It was an accident that took me to his meeting. How often in this life a mere accident may shape our whole future.
But how did you get to the...
You had been called away by that telephone message from Mr. Belasco, so you could not take me to the cabaret, as we had arranged. So I asked your manservant Jeeves to take me there instead. The man has very little intelligence. He seems to have misunderstood me. But I am thankful that he misunderstood me. He took me to Madison Square Garden, where Mr. Mundy holds his meetings. Your manservant escorted me to a seat and then left me. And it was not till the meeting had begun that I discovered the mistake which had been made. My seat was in the middle of a row. Well, I could not leave without inconveniencing a great many people, so I remained.
Jeeves did this.
Yes. And my dear young man, I have never been so thankful for anything else in my whole life. Mr. Mundy was wonderful. He was like some prophet of old, scourging the sins of the people. He leaped about in a frenzy of inspiration till I feared he would do himself an injury. Sometimes he expressed himself in a somewhat odd manner, but every word carried conviction. He showed me New York in its true colors. He showed me the vanity and wickedness of sitting in gilded haunts of vice, eating lobster when decent people should be in bed. And when he stood on one leg and pointed right at where I was sitting and shouted, "This means you!" I could have sunk through the floor. I came away a changed woman. Surely you must have noticed that change in me, Rock Meddler. You must have seen that I was no longer the careless, thoughtless person who had urged you to dance in those places of wickedness.
Yes, I thought something was wrong.
Wrong? Something was right. Everything was right, Rock Meddler. It's not too late for you to be saved. It will be hard at first, but you will find that you can do it if you fight with a stout heart against the glamour and fascination of this dreadful city. Won't you try? For my sake, Rock Meddler. Won't you go back to the country tomorrow and begin the struggle? Little by little, if you use
Wait. Do you want me to go back to the country, Aunt Isabel?
Yes.
To live in the country.
Yes, Rock Meddler.
Stay in the country all the time, do you mean? Never come to New York?
Yes, Rock Meddler. I mean just that. It is the only way. Only there can you be safe from temptation. Will you do it, Rock Meddler? Please, will you? For my sake.
I will!
By the next day, I was back in my old flat, lying in my old armchair, with my feet upon my good old table. I had just come from seeing Rocky off to his country cottage, and an hour before he had seen his aunt off to whatever hamlet she was the caresser. I was alone at last.
He, sir?
Ah, Jeeves, there's no place like home, what?
Very true, sir.
Jeeves.
Sir?
Do you know, at one point in the business, I really thought you were baffled.
Indeed, sir.
When did you get the idea of taking Miss Rock Mettler to Jimmy Mundy's meeting? It was pure genius.
Thank you, sir. It came to me quite suddenly one morning when I was thinking of my aunt, sir.
Your aunt? The handsome cab one?
Yes, sir. I recollected that whenever we observed one of her attacks coming on, we used to send for the clergyman of the parish. We always found that if he talked to her a while of higher things, it diverted her mind from hansom cabs. It occurred to me that the same treatment might prove efficacious in the case of Miss Rock Mettler, sir.
What a brain you have, Jeeves! What do you do to get like that? I believe you must eat a lot of fish or something. Do you eat fish, Jeeves?
No, sir.
Oh, well then, it's just a gift. I take it, and if you aren't born that way, there's no use worrying.
Precisely, sir. If I might make a suggestion, sir, I should not continue to wear your present tie. The green shade gives you a slightly queasy air. I should strongly advocate for the blue and the red domino-patterned one instead, sir.
All right, Jeeves. You know best.
That was Jeeves Knows Best, based on the short story The Ant and the Sluggard by P.G. Wodehouse. Adapted for audio by Gretelyn Darkey. Directed by Gretelyn Darkey and produced by Thomas Marinchek. The cast in order of appearance was Christopher Chance as Bertie Wooster, Robert Howard as Rock Meddler Todd, John Walker as Jeeves, and Erica Lear as Aunt Isabel Rock Meddler. Foley and sound design by Joseph Adams and Jacob Gorsuch. Original music composed by Gretelyn Darkey and mastered by Joseph Adams. A production of We Are One Body Audio Theater.